Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the June 10th Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee. We have a quorum for the committee. We have legislators Randy Brown and Amanda Champion and myself here. Greg Mezey did contact me and say he's going to be about 5 minutes late. I haven't heard from Veronica, but hopefully they'll be here soon. Do we have any public comment, Brittany?
We do not.
Okay. And I don't have any changes to the agenda. Does anybody else want to propose any changes to the agenda? Okay. So let's go on to minutes approval. We have the minutes from May 13th, 2024. So thanks for getting those together for us. Brittany, any comments, question, or first, would someone like to move the minutes? Amanda would like to move. Randy second. Any comments, questions, proposed edits? Okay, all those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you. And for chair's report, I don't have anything really specific, except I know there's a lot of chatter. I got different emails about different bills making their way through the state, so that are relevant to things that we've commented before on this committee or passed resolutions about. But maybe at the next one we'll see really what comes out, what the governor's passed, what's gone through all the committees, and so maybe we can get a report on that, because a lot of the things depends on whether we actually get the money or if the bills are passed at the state level. So we'll be monitoring that. And next we have the county administrator's report. I see Lisa Holmes on Zoom. There we go. Hi, Lisa. Do you have anything for us today?
I do not have a report for the committee today, but thank you.
Okay, moving right along. Well, thank you. And so we're going to go right to the Department of Recycling and Materials Management, way ahead of schedule. So, Kat, let's see, we have a capital payment summary. Usually it's up to you if you want to say anything about it, or is that just for information?
I believe that one was just for information, but if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
That's on packet page 9 if anybody had any questions. Okay, and so packet page 10, you have a resolution, unless you have any other reports you want to go into first or after?
I have one quick update to share regarding encampment cleanup. So we've been in touch with administration and just wanted to share this update with you as well. The city's second encampment cleanup in 2024 took place May 1st through May 7th. They brought in 32 loads of material equaling 118.48 tons of debris, and the total cost of disposal was $11,374. The coordination with the city has worked well, and there haven't been any issues with that cleanup. To date, there's been 2 cleanups total, which totaled 292 tons and $28,071 in tip fees.
Wow. Can you, would you mind emailing us those figures? I didn't get to write them all down. And that's something I think if you could just send that to Brittany to send out to all the legislators, because I think folks would be interested. Amanda?
Yeah, so I know the railroad also was doing like their own cleanup. That's separate from what you're talking about here though, right?
I believe so. This was coordinated through the city.
And so, but you don't know if anything related to them came to our department?
I can ask. This is one that I was kind of shared some of the information, so I can follow up and see if I can get you any more details on that.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because that's a lot from just the city side. I'm imagining the railroad probably had a lot too, so just wondering.
And funding for that? And then Randy? Can you?
So the cost for disposal, to my understanding, was paid through the city.
Paid through the city, okay. Randy?
Yeah, thank you. That's an amazing amount of stuff. That's amazing. And just for a point of record, the county did issue a notice of violation about 2 months ago to the city, and I think we obviously needed to do that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other report before we get into the resolution?
Nope, I can explain a little bit about the resolution when you're ready to talk about it.
Okay, why don't we put that on the floor? So this is packet page 10. This is a budget adjustment from the Department of Recycling and Materials Management, providing for unanticipated leachate expense, ID 12478, and this is a follow-up on what was talked about at the last meeting. Moved by Randy, seconded by Amanda, so it's on the floor. Go ahead, Kat.
Okay, thanks. So I just wanted to kind of highlight some of the components. I know we had the summary attached in the agenda packet as well as a chart kind of demonstrating what we're projecting here. But just wanted to summarize a little bit about the unanticipated expenses that we have for the year. So there was a price increase that moved the cost per 1,000 gallons for treatment at the Ithaca Area Wastewater Treatment Facility from $12 to $50 per 1,000 gallons. Leo had mentioned that at a previous meeting, but that's about a 317% increase in just the price per 1,000 gallons. We anticipate the cost for that price increase to cover about $62,947 this year.
And that, just if I could just interrupt, so this is all detailed on packet page 11 in the memo.
Thank you. The volumes also increased, so we've seen higher volumes of leachate generated primarily at the Caswell landfill this year, Caswell closed landfill. So those anticipated volumes we're expecting will increase an additional $93,765 in expenses as well. And that's part of what this chart on packet page 12 shows, is just kind of where we budgeted for the year, where the actual is to date, and where we're projecting, which would land right around 2.5 million gallons of leachate, coming through for treatment. Additionally, we were informed that leachate may have caused an upset in plant processes at the Ithaca Area Wastewater Treatment Facility, and at that time we took proactive steps by working with engineers, conducting additional testing, working with leachate haulers to adjust practices, and those adjustments we anticipate are going to cost around $17,500 from that response. So at this time, we have a new permit for the Caswell landfill leachate processing, and it has stipulations that include additional testing parameters as well as twice-a-year monitoring. We do want to note that that permit can be revoked at the discretion of the chief operator should there be problems in the future. And so we are actively looking for a backup facility. We anticipate additional costs in hauling and treatment potentially should we find additional need to utilize that backup option. So I did want to note just lastly that we anticipate the changes will have some recurring expenses in our operating budget, which we anticipate will be around $100,000 a year. We're still working through this as we're putting together a 2025 proposed operating budget, so we can provide additional information moving forward as that comes.
Thank you. Any questions? Randy?
So when did we receive notice from the city that they were raising the rates?
That notice was provided, well, the notice itself, I don't know that we received a direct notice. I know there was one in the paper, but then the change went into effect March 1st.
Okay, so in their budget process, they may have gone through that, but they never sent us a letter or anything?
We did not get notice in our budgeting process, for
okay.
Sure.
Okay. And I'm looking at the, so thank you for that. Maybe that's how they're going to pay for all the garbage being removed from. I'm looking at the chart that shows the gallons, and it looks like the gallons are kind of mirroring 2017. I'm looking at this.
Yes, so 2017 was the highest one we've had on record since we've been tracking this, and that was one of our wettest years or the heaviest leachate years. So we included that just to kind of show what it looks, kind of what the curve looked like for that year in comparison to where we are this year.
Okay. And the testing of the leachate, who we're responsible for that, or does the wastewater treatment folks?
We work with contracted engineers to support the testing process.
So at some point, could you just get a copy of what's all in this leachate? I was curious what's in it.
Sure, I can ask Nate to provide some information on that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Is there, are you able to say anything else about the upset that you said in April there was an upset of the plant process?
Yeah, Nate Bates from our office is on Zoom. Nate, I don't know if there's anything you might want to speak to with the additional upsets.
Sure.
Hi, Nate.
So we were informed, we were informed by Ed Gottlieb, who is I believe his title is pre-treatment coordinator, that they had an upset at their facility that could have coincided with one particular load from the Caswell closed landfill. I believe his words were specifically about dissolved oxygen levels.
Dissolved what?
Oxygen.
Dissolved oxygen. So there was too much dissolved oxygen and
So his belief was that one particular load of leachate coincided with a drop in their dissolved oxygen levels in their facility.
and are we?
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
There was a delivery of Caswell leachate. We were told that they saw a decrease in the dissolved oxygen in their plant afterward.
So do we know what caused that?
We don't.
I mean, I mean, you're saying it correlates, with a load we delivered, so I guess conjecture.
Potentially. We
Yeah.
did ask for some additional information from the facility, but we did go through some proactive testing at their request. So we provided the analytical results, and they fit the parameters of their requirement for each of the testing parameters.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on that? Amanda?
Yeah, sorry, question actually about the resolution for Brittany, or Norma, now that Norma's here. Budget adjustments exceeding 5,000. Didn't we change that? It's 15,000, yeah. Not that that affects the resolution, but yeah, thanks.
Could that be seen as a manifest error? Do we need to do anything? Okay, manifest error, so that be changed to, on the first line, whereas pursuant to Administrative Manual Policy 502, budget adjustment exceeding 15,000. That'll read. Okay, good catch, Amanda. Any other questions on that, on the leachate topic or this resolution? I had just one question, kind of going back to what you said. So you're anticipating going forward approximately 100,000 you're budgeting for extra for leachate in your budget?
Yes, for the additional treatment costs as well as the additional testing parameters.
Okay.
And we will be kind of working through that as we're preparing our budget, so we can provide more information as that's available.
And I know you're working for a backup place to
Yes.
send those, so that's still in progress.
Yep.
Okay. All right, ready to vote? So this is on packet page 10, budget adjustment for Department of Recycling Materials Management, providing for an unanticipated leachate expense. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Anything else, Kat?
That's it for us today. Thank you.
Thank you, and Nate, thanks for being here. And you're welcome to stay, up to you. Let's see, next we have the Department of Planning and Sustainability. Katie, yeah, there she is. There's Katie Bergella, our commissioner, and giving us a report. Hi, Katie.
Hi there, Annie. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Great, thanks. So I've got a few things to report to you about today. As I think you're probably all well aware, the consolidated funding application through New York State is due at the end of July. One item we are likely going to be applying for is for another $75,000 from New York State DEC for their non-agricultural, non-point source grant to do a stream corridor assessment and identify flood retention areas for Fall Creek. This would be largely mimicking the award that we were granted this year for 6 Mile Creek, just having a chance to look in depth at our watersheds and identify opportunities to reduce erosion and store floodwaters. So we're looking forward to that. This would also, just like the 6 Mile Creek grant, was building on the work done by the city on their DSIP2, the Drinking Water Source Protection Program studies. This would be building on Cornell's DSIP2 in the Fall Creek watershed. So more to come on that, but I wanted to let you know that we're likely going to be applying for that. Then the other thing I wanted to mention is that this spring, Terry Carroll in our office has started serving on an ICLEI USA, their brand new membership advisory group. This was a competitive process to be selected to be on this group. There are only about 20 people nationwide who are serving on that. So,
Katie, what is ICLEI?
You know, it just is. It used to stand for International Cities or something like that, but it's been just ICLEI for probably 20 years now.
And what kind of group or board is that?
Yeah, ICLEI is kind of the premier international group of municipalities working on issues of climate change and mitigation having to do with climate change.
Okay, go ahead.
We've been a member, the county's been a member, boy, since about 1998, I think. We're kind of one of the early members of ICLEI, and now it's got a global presence, and they provide the software we use, for example, to do our greenhouse gas emissions inventories for government operations and the community at large. And so they formed this group to try to identify any kind of gaps in services or how they could benefit the member communities better. And so Terry's serving on that now. It gives him an opportunity to interact with some of the leaders across the nation from places like the city of Aspen, the town of Windsor, Maine, and Broward County, Florida. So he'll get exposed to different ideas and different people, so that's a great opportunity. So I just wanted to let you know that that group started meeting. It's just meeting quarterly, but they had their first meeting already, and then they do a lot through email as well. And then the last thing I wanted to do was virtually introduce you to Shauna Stevenson. She is our new Housing and Community Development Planner. I know some of you met her at the HED meeting last week, but I wanted to make sure we introduced her at Peak as well. She started on May 28th, and we are very excited to have her joining our team. Shauna, do you want to just say a couple of words about your background, please?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Shauna Stevenson. Hopefully you can hear me. I just saw my camera do something weird. And yeah, I just started a couple of weeks ago here. I graduated from Binghamton University with a master's in geography. My thesis research was about climate change resilience and community engagement in those issues for Broome and Tioga counties. And I also studied housing trends in the Johnson City area, which is where Binghamton University is currently developing some properties there. And prior to that, I was the Director of Programs and Marketing for the Broome County Arts Council doing countywide outreach for artists. So I'm really happy to be here and to work with you all soon.
Well, welcome very much, Shauna, and I'm happy that I got to meet you a couple of times already in meetings and actually see you in person at one point. So welcome to the department, and we're looking forward to working with you more.
Yeah, thanks. Nice to see you again.
And that's it for my report, Anne. Thank you.
All right. Any questions for Katie? All right, thank you very much. Sorry the committee grilled you so much with their questions, but maybe next time it'll be a little bit easier. So thank you very much, Katie. Good to see you all. All right, we're trucking right along with our meeting today. So next is presentation. We have Katie Hallis and Graham Savio here from CCE talking about the Tompkins County Food System Plan. And so you have a presentation, and in our packets that starts on page 15. Did you want to say anything, or I'll just hand it over to you folks to start your presentation. Oh, I see some folks from here there. There's Veronica and some other folks.
You're in that picture too, Annie.
Pardon me?
You're in that picture too. Way in the back.
Yeah, and just have if you're going to talk on the microphone, it's about 4 inches from yourself. There you go.
Does that sound okay?
Perfect, yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us today. I'm excited to be here to just share a few updates about the food system plan and Tompkins Food Future, and just kind of what we've been up to and what we've been learning since we last spoke with you. So I'm mostly going to focus on updates related to implementation of the food system plan, alongside just some sort of programmatic and outreach activities that we've been engaging with to continue to share the plan and engage the community in the food system, raising awareness and educating the community about food systems change. Just by way of a brief reminder, to just sort of call in the general themes of the plan and sort of the community priorities as laid out in these 3 directions of building resilience, cultivating equity and economic opportunity, and promoting human and ecosystem health. We continue to focus on those directions, and again, just by way of sort of presencing some of the more fine-grained details, the plan contains 9 goals, and I won't read through these now, but the plan, as we said from the beginning, has been and continues to be a voluntary framework for coordination and collaboration among food system stakeholders and other community actors. So like I said, I'm going to talk about I'm going to share some updates from implementation over the past year. And just to sort of remind folks of the process that we've used, because this plan, I think, because of the vastness of the plan with 47 different recommendations across all sectors of the food system, from agriculture to food access and food security to food waste and recovery and lots of other areas in between. These, I think, 11 are pictured here. The work of the Food Policy Council and the sort of overall coalition of Tompkins Food Future has been to kind of identify the priorities that sort of that overarching council can focus on and maybe have an influence on, and to have some working groups around those. So that's mostly what I'm going to talk about today. But I also do want to note that in addition to sort of having this internal guiding advisory group that's picking some priorities to focus on for the year, there's also, the whole rest of the system, the rest of the network, and we ask people, we seek input on what those priorities are. So this slide is just sort of a sampling of what we heard most recently from the broader community around what should be prioritized in 2024. And this exercise happened at the Food System Summit in September, which was attended by 95 people. So you can see, again, this isn't all of it, but this is just kind of a sampling. You can see all of it at the full report that's linked at the bottom, and that should be in your packet as well. If you look at those, and if you look at the priorities on the previous slide, you'll probably notice, like I do, that there's not a whole lot new or different. This is in people's own words, but there's a lot of common threads and themes, and a lot of crossover. So we feel like the work is cut out in that sense. So I'm just going to share a couple of updates or sort of progress reports on some of the goals and recommendations that we have chosen to focus on in the last year or so. Goal number 3, which is to promote coordination and collaboration among stakeholders, I have found that to be, as the staff person who coordinates Tompkins Food Future, I'm sort of playing this role of looking at the system, convening people, focused on implementation, but also as someone sort of in that network of folks working in the food system, this is the goal, this is the area where I find myself like actually working the most. So what you see here, these reports are kind of programs within and focused on by Tompkins Food Future. So the convening work, which you see here, the 2-day food system summit that I know several folks in this room attended, the more recent April Food System Forum, which was kind of a follow-up to the summit intended to create some continuity between larger gatherings. And most recently, we did something kind of unusual that was really, really fun, which was an art show in partnership with the Community Arts Partnership that featured over 18 community artists. Had a really amazing attendance. This opening night just happened on Friday. And I'll just note, this show is going to be up for the month of June. I highly recommend going to check it out. It's at the Art Space, which is in the same building as Visit Ithaca and the History Center. So I don't know if folks have been in that gallery, but it's just open to the public, I think, most weekdays. We've also, I just wanted to give a quick update on some of the grant writing activity that we've been a part of, and Graham's going to share a little bit more about a specific aspect of that. But we've been involved with whether, having written grants to support Tompkins Food Future or just been a collaborator on someone else's grant or sort of supported someone's work on grant writing. You can see here some of the high-level pieces that we've been part of, and then just some of the more general outreach, both sort of in digital communications as well as in-person educational programming and outreach. So you can see some of those numbers there. And I have to admit that quarterly newsletter is starting to become a little more frequent than quarterly. There's been a lot of great information and opportunities to share. So I've decided kind of not to hesitate on getting things out to people. I just had to share a couple pictures with you guys because it was so cool, the art show, including the Kids Corner. Just a couple of notes from the Food System Forum. If you were to look at the report from the summit, you'd see a lot about what we focused on. People, again, the model has been to say, we're kind of coordinating, we're sort of seeding the agenda, but then inviting people to sort of plug in with the issues and the topics and the questions that they want to focus in on. So what you see there in bold are sort of the mini sessions that people led. I think even some folks in this room were part of those. And the words in italics are just some of people's takeaways, which are always helpful to us in sort of thinking about and planning what's ahead. Shifting gears a little bit, goal 4.4, which is really to increase access to SNAP to overcome barriers to enrollment. I know that you are all probably really aware of these issues, but just to kind of emphasize what was reported from our working group, again, I think you all know that the barriers and the challenges associated with SNAP access and enrollment are complex, and there are a lot of issues like staff turnover or even vacant positions that we can't necessarily flip a switch at the county level, and we do need sort of work at the state and federal level, but that it's a really sort of worthwhile area of work in terms of food access because it sort of remains the most effective way to benefit a household's food budget, and as kind of a bonus, like leveraging funds into our local economy.
If I could chime in there, I know that a lot of us that, went to that forum or the two-day program, the simulation of trying to get SNAP benefits was just astounding, that of how hard and complicated it is. Greg and then Randy?
Yeah, sorry, just two quick questions. How much of the SNAP challenges are locally based versus at the state level? Would be my first question, and then my follow-up will depend on the answer to that one.
Randy, feel free to jump in here, because I know Randy is one of the people who's kind of been part of this effort within the Food Policy Council. I don't know if I could say if it's more one or the other. I think there are things like, for the NOEP coordinator, for example, which is the Nutrition Outreach Education Program. I might have to check that, but basically it's a state-funded position. Every county gets one. Here, the position is based at Catholic Charities.
Can you get a little closer?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Here, the position is based at Catholic Charities, so there's one per county. That position has seen 3 different staff in as many years, and so it's high turnover. It's not a super high-paid job. I think it's a challenging job. I think there are probably things that could be done locally, but I know that there's been discussion of trying to, ask for more funding to have more coordinators, because even with one position, it doesn't seem to really yield higher enrollment. And importantly, that person cannot actually enroll people. They can sort of promote and get the word out about SNAP. They can help people sort of prepare and get ready to enroll in SNAP, but you still have to go through DSS.
Got it. So then I guess my question is, do you have a specific recommendation for what we, Tompkins County, should be doing to alleviate this issue?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really appreciate the question. I honestly wouldn't want to answer it myself without consulting with the other folks working on this, but sure. I will, and I do appreciate that question. And maybe Randy has something to add here, since you've been in communication with DSS, starting to connect with them. But
yeah, I think as we navigate the budget process and we start to understand priorities, right? I think these are the type of conversations we should be having in the programmatic committee level, mm-hmm. so that we can either make recommendations from this committee to the budget process or to inform it, or we can advocate for it, or we can sort of flesh some of the details out now, so that when we get to September, August, September, October, whatever the 3-month period or 2-month period is, mm-hmm. we've already sort of done that, and it's not on the fly, on the floor. So that's why if there's things that we can specifically do, that maybe it's an easy tweak, maybe it's not, right? Mm-hmm. But specific things that we at the county level can do, I think will be helpful to the process. So
yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, and I think it kind of the NOEP piece, it kind of sits alongside the DSS staffing issue, because even if you have a really solid NOEP coordinator and they're out hitting the streets and sort of generating a lot of interest and getting people enrolled, with so many staff positions vacant, I think that those wait times are really long. They're 90 days instead of 30 days, and that's meaningful, not in a good way, to families and people.
Staffing issues at DSS?
Yeah, just not being able to fill all the positions for folks who would actually be doing that enrollment. Not to mention that it's just a kind of as you spoke to, Annie, it's an arduous application process. Yes, we went through this simulation, but that simulation is meant to sort of reflect reality, which is that it's really hard.
Yeah, Veronica's holding up. Is that the application?
For some reason I have a DSS benefits application in
that's
my
an amazing visual aid. We did not coordinate that.
Yeah. Oh, you can't really see it, but it's a lot of pages with a lot of questions and things that I would find it hard to answer, or potentially you have to document or well, it's not clear to me how much you actually have to fill out, because in that simulation they gave us applications in a language we weren't necessarily literate in, and I gave up and handed it back to the person, and they said it was okay, but even in the simulation, I didn't feel great about it. We've got questions like, are you or is anyone who lives with you a migrant or seasonal farm worker? If not employed, when was the last time you or anyone who lives with you worked? Who, when, where, why did you or they stop working? And there's like, I don't know, something teen pages, lots and lots of questions, some of which the answer might be ambiguous. Wow, there are a lot of consents in the back. I think anyone would find this very difficult, and all the more so if you are, for instance, hungry.
Thank you. Randy, and then Veronica, if you had anything else?
That was my thing.
Okay.
Yeah, first of all, this program is actually funded through the Farm Bill, and it's a federal program, so USDA. So the Cornell Crop Extension has expressed a desire to help with educating and enrolling people, and that's not as easy as it sounds. The USDA has pretty strict requirements on how you can actually help people. And I did meet with Kit Kephard, and we talked about SNAP for quite a bit. It was a good education and understanding. They were short-staffed for a couple years, and they had backlogs on SNAP, but that no longer exists. They're almost fully staffed. I think they're one position short for this caseworker location. But part of the problem, too, is that a lot of them are new. It takes a long time for people to learn the processes, and sometimes a year or more to really understand it. But their DSS has no issues with having people help them, and they talked about the position is funded through Catholic Charities, and the issue with high turnover there has been an issue. But there's restrictions on what kind of outreach the USDA will allow. So right now, I met with Chris Kai-Jones on this from Cornell Crop Extension. He's the nutrition issue leader, and they're researching that to find out what really are the limitations that the USDA does put on them. There are software applications out there that they can use that are currently approved, as well as online that the DSS supplies, where people can go in and fill out these documents. But quite often, and Kit mentioned this, what will happen, people go through this whole process and find out they're going to get $72. And so and then they're not done. They've got to go through the interviews and all these things. And so is it really worth it for $72? Some people don't think so. So I do think that there's opportunity here. Cornell Crop Extension is researching it right now, and I think DSS is more than willing to work with people within that box of limitations to improve that. I know that Kit is working on providing us with the number of applications and whether they've gone up or down in the number of people, or I should say, it's not people, it's actual households receiving this funding. And it's over 4,000 in Tompkins County. But I do think that there's things that we can do to help DSS through this process, and hopefully CC can figure out where that box allows them to work. So.
Yeah, keep us, as Greg said, please keep us updated, and if we can help with certain areas of that. Okay, thanks for letting us chime in during your presentation,
Katie. Thank you so
Katie.
much. That was great. Yeah, great. Thank you. And I will follow up on those items. So the next one I just wanted to bring your attention to in terms of progress this year. So goal 4.5, which is actually fits really nicely with the one before. So that's still within the goal focused on food access and security. And given that there are so many issues in the food system that are connected with legislation, rules, regulation, funding that is happening outside of our community at the state and federal level, there was a need identified to establish some sort of organization or apparatus to advocate, organize, communicate around these policy changes and funding opportunities. So the Food Policy Council, which, as you all know, from the beginning of this food system planning initiative, has been sort of the leadership of the initiative. And as Tompkins Food Future has sort of expanded and grown into kind of the network for food system change makers, the Food Policy Council has focused its sort of mission to become this standalone advocacy apparatus. They are under the fiscal sponsorship of the Village at Ithaca, and they're still part of the Tompkins Food Future Network as a coalition member. And they've chosen to sort of focus in on this issue so that there can be a group locally that is able to organize and advocate. And they're kind of just ramping up with this activity, but this looks like, direct conversations, letters, op-eds, public campaigns around things like the Farm Bill, which is being looked at right now and is sort of on the docket, and programming to support people who want to get engaged in this space. So, feel free to chime in with any questions now or later, but that has felt like an important thing to have established in our food system. Oops. Sorry, it's not moving forward. There we go. This one, increasing food procurement among institutions. I'm not going to read through all these, but you can see that there's been some meaningful progress, and that work continues mostly under the leadership of Harvest New York and Lizzie. I'm totally forgetting her last name right now. Cooper, thank you. In collaboration with Tompkins Food Future and other partners, particularly in the school system. I'm going to turn this one over to Graham, who's going to speak to a couple of goals that are pretty closely linked related to land protection and land access.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Katie. These two goals, partner develop a system to prioritize and protect land for food production and grow land access and food production opportunities for Black, Indigenous, people of color, low income, and historically excluded residents. One of the mechanisms by which we're trying to move forward on these goals is with a pre-application process allowing Tompkins County landowners and prospective landowners access to the Farmland Protection Implementation Grant Program. So this is a program that provides, I don't know the total amount of money, but it's a couple of $1 million per economic development area around the state. I'm not going to give you a total across the whole state right now. I don't have it off the top of my head. But over the last few years, the southern tier, which is where the county of Tompkins sits, has not actually accessed the money that's set aside for farmland protection because there hasn't been a relationship with a land trust that would hold the conservation easements for where the development rights are purchased. So Crystal Buck in our office, in collaboration with Abigail Connor in the planning department, have been working really diligently to put this program, this pre-application process together in collaboration with the New York Ag Land Trust and the Finger Lakes Land Trust. And so this would allow, this would be a pre-application process in Tompkins County where landowners could work with Crystal and Abigail to put an application together that's sort of pre-vetted, and that goes on to the New York Ag Land Trust and the Finger Lakes Land Trust, who then directly apply to the state for the funding. So it's the land trust that actually applies to the state, and we are facilitating the connection with the landowner who owns the farmland, who wants to keep that farmland in farming. So this is the first year that we've done this pre-application process, the first year we've worked with the New York Ag Land Trust on this. Crystal has been in conversation with a number of farmers and farmland owners around the county since April, applications are due in August, at which point we hand them over to the New York Ag Land Trust and the Finger Lakes Land Trust. The actual farmland production implementation grant funding comes out next spring. So they will have a couple of months to get ready for their own applications. So we're hopeful that we'll have a little bit of funding flowing into Tompkins County for farmland conservation next year. Probably, we're optimistically we would have 1 or 2 properties protected through this program next year. It's not a whole lot of them.
Graham, so if the application would go through, and when the application, does it go through, you're saying it goes through one of these 2 land trusts?
Yeah.
Or does it have to go through our local land trust?
It doesn't, it goes through one of these land trusts, yeah. And so they would be the actual holder of the conservation easement, and they would be the entity that is compensated by the state for that conservation easement.
Yeah, I've heard of this program over the years, but no, like you said, nobody's been able to take advantage of it that I've heard of. And is it a one-time payment, or is it a yearly payment?
It is a one-time payment.
It's a one-time payment.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions on that part? Okay, thanks, Graham.
Actually, I would like to add that there really wasn't an entity in Tompkins County that was interested in taking this on, correct? So there was a lot of research done, and I know that you met with, I believe that other entity is out of Onondaga County, or that area up there?
Yeah, the New York Ag Land Trust is based out of Syracuse, yeah. And Finger Lakes Land Trust is actually, over the past few years, it seems that they're building out some capacity and interest in agricultural land conservation. Up until now, they've been more focused, it seems, on water quality and sort of water-oriented properties through the Emerald Necklace, I believe it's called, around Cayuga Lake. But there's some interest there in ag land conservation at this point as well. So it's great to have 2 partners on this.
Yeah, and there was research done by people on the Food Policy Council. They met with this other group and the New York Agricultural Land Trust and did some research and discussions and to understand what they were doing in their area, and they had some success in the area, if I remember correctly. So,
yeah.
So I think it's a good fit.
Yeah, and there's actually a 3rd land trust in Broome County that's just getting off the ground, and so we may work with them in the future as well to have a number of land trusts at the table.
Right.
Great, thanks. So that, again, is just sort of a quick sampling of some of the priorities focused on in the past year. And I just wanted to put out there to the committee as sort of a question and asking for input or guidance around sort of reporting on implementation. So we have been, we have been in the work, hopefully, as you can see, and with, looking for the best way to sort of report out on progress, to sort of track what's happening in the food system. As many of us know firsthand, that alone is a significant effort to kind of keep that going. And we are just sort of right now in the process of gathering input from stakeholders about what would be most useful in terms of reporting. I think, like so many projects and nonprofits, we definitely could generate an annual report. And again, with the recognition that's a big lift, and also with the recognition that we have a lot of volunteers who are part of this effort, and we have, a half-time staff person. So just in terms of, sort of best practice or preferences or what is most useful, we are interested in hearing from you about, how to best communicate progress on the food system plan and to just hear updates in general. So I don't know if we should save that for the discussion part of things, or if folks have any thoughts now, but we're sort of in that process now.
Why don't we save that for the discussion section,
Okay.
because I know you have some other asks.
Yeah, there's just
too.
a couple more pieces. So I mentioned earlier that, like any initiative, Tompkins Food Future has, and I think largely because it is a community-oriented project, is always evolving. And as we've moved into out of sort of the food system research and planning work and more into the implementation, it just continues to become more clear what is needed, where the gaps are, what the role of an entity like Tompkins Food Future can be. And so we have spent some time in pretty much the first quarter of 2024 looking at our role, looking at our work for the year. And while I would say not a whole lot has changed, we have sort of found maybe another emphasis, and we've sort of started to put this out there as sort of an articulation of what and who Tompkins Food Future is and what it's for. And so that first line, I'll just try to read that quickly. TFF facilitates a network of food system change makers and stakeholders. By offering a multitude of engagement opportunities, the network aims to support an intentional and interconnected system of members from many different organizations. So this is very much in fitting with the fact that there's no one entity that can successfully carry out all these actions, and that it really is dependent upon folks coming together and coordinating and aligning resources and leveraging resources. And our specific roles continue to be to steward the implementation of the food system plan while keeping it current with the community vision. So a lot of that activity you kind of just heard from me about. The second piece is identifying and piloting system-level support. So what are some sort of programmatic interventions or innovations that could really support a lot of folks in this system? And Graham's going to talk more about that in a moment with the grant writing support. And lastly, convening food system stakeholders, which seems to be, one of the most crucial pieces of our work, just in terms of helping people to stay connected with what one another's doing, to share with one another, and to build the relationships needed for meaningful collaboration. And so you heard me talk about the forums, which we're hoping to, again, funding dependent, but we think a quarterly forum is right. And this year, which we're kind of looking at as a pilot, it's probably going to be 2. The second piece is experiential site visits, which we're doing the first one, I guess it's next week. We're taking a cohort of folks from Tompkins County to the Food Bank of the Southern Tier, which is doing a day of service for Juneteenth. If anyone didn't see my email about that or wants to hear more, it's a half day, and it's a volunteer shift. It's a racial wealth equity training, and then there's a tour of their warehouse. So it's kind of an opportunity to experience an element of the food system together. There will be a follow-up session on that, looking at specific recommendations in the plan kind of related to food access and security. And then the third piece there is the Tompkins Food Future implementation team, which is just kind of a continuation of the group that has been meeting to move this work forward. And there's a little bit more underneath just about structure, which I don't think I'll spend too much time on here today, but just to say that it's kind of still in development and also continuing the work that we've been doing. So I'll hand it over to Graham now, who's going to speak to to share an update on one of the programs that we've been focused on this past year.
Thanks, Katie. So in the 2024 county budget, you all allocated $50,000 to hire a food system grant writer in Tompkins County. Thank you for that. We are working on how to implement that. So as I'm sure you're aware, we are on our second executive director in the last 6 months, and our fourth in the last few years. So there's been some transition, and working through the details of how to actually implement this sort of reset when we took on our new executive director, Cynthia Cave-Gaetani, in January of this year. Since that time, I feel like we've really clarified a lot of things about what we can and can't do, and we have a lot of support from Cynthia to actually make this happen at this time. So in terms of what we will be doing, so we're hiring, we have an RFP that we expect to release in about a week to hire a consultant who will do this work to educate and assist and support food system entities in their efforts to secure grant funding in Tompkins County. And so I'm not going to read all these bullets here, but these are essentially the pieces of the work that this contractor is going to do over the coming months. And so a lot of this will be in sort of group educational opportunities where food system entities come together in a room to workshop and work on grant applications with close assistance from this grant educator. We're putting out the RFP with the expectation that a lot of the details of how it's going to come together are going to be on the expert who is the grant writer who's hired to do this grant writing assistance. So, you know, Katie has done some grant writing support for community entities, in fact, quite a bit of grant writing support for community entities, so have I, but we're looking to take on somebody who sort of does this as their bread and butter. And so I guess one of the big questions for you all at this point is we are a little behind on getting this person aboard, and there's a lot of food system grants that come out in the fall, and there's a good number of food system grant opportunities that come out in the spring of the year, so due in sort of the March, April, May timeline. We would really like to be able to keep this person aboard, keep this contractor working through next spring. So $50,000 would be able to cover their time. We expect to bring them on in early September, late August, early September. So we would like to keep them going through the following June or July to be able to cover that spring grant writing period. That would be a no-cost extension. Essentially, I know historically those have been all right on OTRs. I'm not sure if we're still calling them OTRs, but would love to have some sense of whether that would be amenable, whether you all would be amenable to that.
First off, I just want to say that at the last legislature meeting, I misspoke when I said what was coming up. In a quick perusal of, I hadn't read through everything yet, but we had the agenda for this meeting, and I just want to say to other legislators, I misspoke and said I thought you were going to ask for possibly a new 50,000.
Oh, not at this time, no.
Okay, just going through, I was like, oh, asking for 50,000. So I just want to correct that, and I'll correct that when I give my next report at the legislature. So did anybody want to speak to that? Randy?
That's a question for Norma. Is that work? I mean, if you don't hire somebody for the full year, does that money, can it carry over to the next year or not?
No.
If you haven't expended it all?
No, it can't. It has to be requested again.
It has to be requested again.
So if they spent $15,000 this year, they'd ask for the additional money for next year?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Amanda?
And then, so just in terms of the process, so they haven't been given the money yet. When they hire this person, then we would disperse the money.
It's a contractual relationship with the agency because they're not a county department.
Okay.
So when you say contractual, you mean direct contract with the consultant? Or reimbursement?
We would have a contract with Cooperative Extension, with the agency directly for whatever the services are. So we do a contract for every agency, every budget cycle, that are not, any funding that goes out of the county that is not directly in a departmental budget has to have a contract. So we create a contract for each of these. So there's probably a contract that has not been fully expended because we don't expend the funds without receipts. And those funds will go back into the general fund and have to be requested again for the following year. Did that answer the question? Okay.
Hey, that's good to know.
I think as far as just speaking for myself, I generally don't have an issue with voting for something if we've already approved the money, but it hasn't been spent, but I can't speak for everybody. Amanda, or then Randy?
Yeah, so they would, CCE would put this in as another request for whatever amount that would be, and then that would be something that either the administrator would approve or not approve.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
And it would come forward to the legislature if it's unapproved. I will say too, though, that if the funding is being spent in 2024, and there's an encumbrance, which in the county that, so if those expenses are actually being realized in 2024, that's the only time the funding can roll over to the following year. It has to be money that's being spent in the current year, and then those encumbrances can go forward. If it's so we can't hold money for an expenditure that you expect for the following year. So just to clarify. So if it's something that's being spent in the current year, you've been approved for those funds, but you're just not going to request those funds until the following year because you don't get the invoice, that's one thing. If it's an expense that you are not incurring in the current year and you'll be expecting, you're going to, because of delays, it's going to go through the next year. That has to go for a new ask of the legislature.
So now I'm more confused, but let me ask this question.
I did that intentionally.
Thank you, really good job.
Yeah, thanks.
It's not easy on Monday morning, but thank you. So if they have started to use the money, does that mean that they don't have to ask for an OTR?
If there is an
like if they've started to spend it?
If the expense has incurred in 2024.
The whole.
Right.
It can't be part.
It can't be part, no.
So if they do part, if they expend part of it, they still have to ask for an OTR?
That's correct.
Okay, so I did understand it, yeah.
Okay, I had one other, just
Amanda, and then, yep, we have Randy and Greg.
now that we have that all sorted out. Just, like, I definitely would want to support this, but, you should also know that we're asking our departments to make two budgets. One would be a maintenance of effort budget, and one is a 5% decrease. So, for me, I can't speak at this point about what I would vote for or against, but that's a huge cut to departments, and that's kind of a priority for me. So just putting that out there so you know what the county is facing this year.
Thank you.
Randy and then Greg.
I don't agree with that, by the way, because I think the county has lots of funds available. But we have requested the departments to do exactly as Amanda stated. The reason that this thing came about is because as the Food Policy Council analyzed the needs, there were hundreds of grants out there that were not being achieved locally. And there was nobody out there that understood them or were writing the grants. So money that could be coming for the Food Policy Council for all these initiatives and whatnot is out there, but we didn't know how to achieve it. And the other part of that is, and then from that, the Food Policy Council said this was their priority, so to do that. And that also came from the various summits that we had and whatnot. But Graham's right as well. A lot of turnover at CC administration, also right at the headquarters office here, turnover there. And it did take a while for everybody to get up to speed. So the delay was because of all the administration issues behind it. And it took months to get this worked out. So.
Thanks. Greg?
Feel a little bit like a bobblehead right now. Just trying to, we currently we granted in the last budget process a $50,000 grant to support grant writing for your organization, correct?
Grant writing for food system entities, so
For food system
not
entities.
CCE itself, no.
Got it. So who is going to be the recipient of that?
So we receive the funding per the contract, and then we hire a consultant, a contractor, who will actually be the one who works specifically with the food system entities to support them in securing grant funding.
And you're saying that that $50,000 is enough for the portion of time that that grant writer is going to be working with you in this iteration of that process?
We're considering this a pilot, and so as Randy, I think, alluded to, this grant writer, this consultant, will not actually be writing grants pen to paper for food system entities. They will be doing basically everything else on this list, including helping them find which grants are most appropriate for them, including putting paperwork together, including proofreading and suggesting edits and all those things. And at the end, writing up what they learned from this process. I expect one of the things they will learn from this process is there are a number of entities in this county who really need somebody to write grants for them. The educational component and all of the other things are not enough if you have literacy challenges, if you have ESL challenges. So there are folks in this county who really need more than this. But this is a pilot, a 1-year pilot, and we expect the recommendations at the end of this to be really illuminating. One of the key things there too is if the county is interested in hiring a grant writer who will support food system entities, how can that happen? Where does that person sit? So I expect that to be in the recommendations this person produces as well.
And you're hoping that these recommendations will be done by June of '25?
That's the hope, yeah. So a sort of a 11, 12-month period. Yeah.
Okay. And so, Norma, if I heard you correctly, if they engage with based on their contract, if they sign a contract with a consulting entity, they will have to come through the over target request or target request process for the other half of their funds, even if they are in the process of spending the funds from the original award that they received?
It's, I'm just going to say it depends. We'd have to see we have to look at what the agreement is. And
so moral of the story, try to commit as much of your money in 2024 as possible, and then work out the minutia of municipal government.
yeah, you'll need to work with the county administration office we just want to make sure that the intent here is able to be accomplished. So, yeah, so when you have settled this, you might want to reach out to us and let's talk it through.
Okay, so before we sign a contract with a contractor, I think we want to be sure that contract essentially encumbers all the funding for 2024.
Or we want to make sure that we've encumbered what is eligible and that we know what you need to ask for in 2025 so that the intent of this budget is so that we meet the intent. Because we want to make sure that we are following municipal rules. So
I guess, sorry to belabor this, and if this is not the right forum to ask this question, then I'm happy to move on. So similarly to some of the grant awardees that we get through other advisory I'm thinking of the Strategic Tourism Planning Board and stuff like that, right? Where we just passed a resolution at the legislature that was bringing funds forward because not all of the funds were spent in the year in which the grant was issued.
And here's where it gets complicated because that's an entity that the county controls. It's our budget. So it's within our budget. That's different, I believe, than we're talking about a contract for a contract.
Yeah.
And that's what makes, so I just want to make sure that we cover all of the bases for municipal law. That's what I'm just saying. Just give us a call. We'll make sure that we follow all the little bouncing balls to make sure that we don't have a problem. I would hate for you to commit and then find out that you really couldn't commit through contractual arrangement because you're not it's not an entity that's really managed by no.
Yeah, okay. All right, so there's some nuance difference.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I just want to make sure you guys get your money.
I appreciate that question, yeah.
No, and I don't want to make this it sounds more complicated. We'll just work together and figure it out. It's okay. Yeah. We'll get it figured out.
They're pretty friendly over there.
Can I ask in terms of timeline of y'all's budget process for 2025, when would an OTR for 2025 be approved? When would we know that an OTR?
Yeah, so right now, we've asked all the agencies to submit their over-target requests, so my recommendation to you is submit it even if we have to pull it. And then those authors, well, the budget usually is adopted by November, so we would know by November whether that's going to be approved. But I would say that if you're unsure, so you assume that 25,000 will get spent in 2024 and you'll probably need the other half for 25, I would just go ahead and put that over target request in now.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else on, or what?
Oh, no, I was just going to not talk anymore.
Okay. All right, so.
Actually, I have one last comment.
Sure.
The administration has informed CCE folks that they need to look at the budget like everybody else. And I know that Cynthia, Rob Brown, and I are going to go through every contract that they have. So that's going to be done in the next 2 weeks because they're not, because of turnover, there's also not a lot of awareness of some of these contracts that have been going on for some time. So we're going to do that process.
Amanda?
This is a little aside, but so is CCE, are they putting together their budget now to fit, because they do it on the same cycle as the county?
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, so you would just jump in on that process?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And despite all the talk about turnover here, I'm really excited about where we are now. Rob Brown as our finance director, Cynthia Cave-Gaetani as our director. We're really excited about the capacity we have in both administrative and programmatic.
Yeah, I agree completely.
All right, and then you had another question about reporting. Is it time to go to that? Like how often you want
Yeah, I think so.
that we want to have reports or updates?
Yeah, this is pretty much the conclusion of what we had to share. So, yeah, we'd love to open it up to discussion on any of these items and, yeah, to just circle back to the question about, expectations, best practices, what's valuable in terms of not just to, to the legislature as well as to the community at large in terms of reporting on progress.
How often have you been reporting to us? Do you know?
Yeah, I think we've been coming to peak about annually. I think it was more frequently during the planning process. But in the last 2 years, I think it's been about once a year.
Yeah, I mean, I'll open it up. I mean, I'm okay with it, with annually. I think it feels like we're getting enough input, but how do other folks feel? Amanda?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. I think if there are questions like you brought up today, or, if there's something you want feedback from the committee or the legislature on, then, the chair can always add a 15-minute section into the agenda. So if, there could be time, if you want to do a smaller report and not save it all for, once, I mean, I think we're flexible, so. But I don't necessarily need lots more.
Thank you. Anybody else? Randy?
I'm the liaison for the Food Policy Council, and I just wanted to state it's a really strong group. I mean, there's no lack of volunteers. We continue to get more, it seems, people coming in. It's one of the rare groups that is really invested in that. And all the outreach has been good. But the discussion about the Tompkins food future, could you elaborate on that just because the Food Policy Council is this kind of an ad hoc committee, I guess. I'm not sure how it would be classified by the county. But the Tompkins food future is moving to another level. And if you could maybe just talk about what you envision for that. You wrote some things in there about it. They could raise funds and it would open up opportunities. So if you could talk about that a little bit, I appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah, I think that for most of this work, Tompkins Food Future and the Food Policy Council have been essentially one and the same. Tompkins Food Future came about as a way to essentially name the food system planning work, kind of as like a, public engagement, and almost like it was a campaign to say, rather than to go to the community and say, we're doing a community food system plan, to give it a little bit more of, just to give it a name and to try to generate some interest. And as I said before, the Food Policy Council, which, as you said, Randy, has been since, 2015, 2016, a self-organized group of citizens, all volunteer, not affiliated with any organization. And, in 2019, when the council decided it wanted to take on this work of creating a plan, which is really like following in the footsteps of so many food policy councils throughout the country, and recognizing that that was needed to help identify the priorities and really like clarify, what we wanted to focus on, what the Food Policy Council wanted to focus on, there needed to be a partnership with an organization that could host a staff person. And CCE had been at the Food Policy Council table the whole time. And with me coming on as staff and with receiving the county funds and community foundation funds, CCE's partnership kind of took on a new life. And as we then moved into implementation, and particularly this issue around advocacy, because the food system requires certain activities in order to achieve certain outcomes, like talking to elected officials, encouraging elected officials to make decisions that benefit our communities, educating the community on, policies and programs that benefit or harm them and, impact the food system. So it became pretty clear pretty quickly that there needed to be kind of a distinction. CCE, because it is an educational organization, cannot engage in advocacy. And so in order to sort of fulfill that need and to engage in that level of, or just in those types of activities, the Food Policy Council decided that it could be that sort of advocacy apparatus as we've talked about it. And as that has become more clear, Tompkins Food Future, you know what? I actually had one other thing to share with you, but it's in your packet. There's a link to the network map that we worked on. I could go back on the Zoom and show it, but I also know we're probably over time. Tompkins Food Future has really identified a role for itself as sort of a network cultivator. So there are so many different players and organizations and people in the food system. And Tompkins Food Future isn't so much like the umbrella organization that everyone gathers under. You could almost think of it as, or one of the ways I think of it is like the scaffolding that holds up a tent that people can gather under. And so providing like the kind of just very practical on the ground support of like organizing meetings and coordinating the agenda for those meetings and, securing the space for people to come together. And so I think, that network, as we've seen with the work that we've done, is strong and growing with people attending. And I think there's also an element to that, as much as we have the plan to sort of guide the work, when you bring people together and invite people to like share themselves, share their work, just what I showed with the forum, like to have Allie Evans, who's with FoodNet, say, I want to lead a session on supporting the needs of aging adults and, how food system needs for aging adults in Tompkins County. I've just noticed how valuable it can be for those themes and those needs to kind of emerge So not trying to control the agenda, but just to say, like, how do people want to use this time together? So happy to say more, but also happy to take more questions or hear more thoughts.
Any more questions or thoughts? Veronica?
I guess I have two thoughts that are disconnected. So the one connected to you to what you just said is, could you share a little more about the listening work that went on at the last summit? Because, I mean, I was there, I remember what it was, but you had a lot of quotes about people really liking that and it being an important part of the process. But I don't know that everyone around this table experienced that. And I think that like somewhat broadly structured listening was really important and not something that there is enough of in almost any of our systems.
Yeah, as far as the summit,
and by the summit, I think I mean the forum.
The forum, okay,
Sorry.
great. I was gonna say, I have
the one that
those
just happened,
here.
yeah.
Yeah, I can just reiterate some of those. Or did you want me to speak to like what we actually did in terms of the programming, or more of like what the experience was like for people, the takeaways?
Maybe what we actually did with the listening part, or why that matters.
Yeah. So the forum itself, and I know some folks were there, so the actual like program of the evening, it was a 3-hour event. The first half an hour was folks just coming in and getting seated and eating a good meal together. We had dinner from Ixie's Arepas, which if you haven't had her food, highly recommend. It's Venezuelan food. And then we moved into just sort of an opening introduction from me. And then we moved into Patrice Lockhart-Anthony, who many folks probably know, but she's a local consultant and equity educator and facilitator. And she led a session, trying to remember exactly what she called it, had a long name. But essentially, as Veronica said, it was a listening session. And so Patrice gave some opening words about how, even though we have shared goals and shared purpose around what we're doing in the food system, without sort of the relational piece, without really having the communication skills to hear what one another is saying, it can be really hard to actually move the work forward. And I have definitely seen that in my 4 years doing this work, but also my 16 years of living in this community and working and being active. And so, yeah, Patrice led us through a number of exercises that were really just focused on, hearing what each other was saying, responding to some prompts, reflecting back what we heard from one another. We actually had a couple of different opportunities to do that. And as much as I think it's tempting to sort of jump to what often feels like the substance of the work, like, the topics of addressing gaps in food system infrastructure and building a cooperative Tompkins economy. I actually had one person write me afterwards who said, and I think I quoted this, he said, it's easy for me to get really excited about the technical aspects of the food system, but none of that's helpful if we aren't truly listening to each other. And so I've heard, kind of similar comments from people about how valuable they felt that was.
Thank you. And then if I can say my other comment to the question about updating here, I think like an update for update's sake annually makes sense, but I also wonder if we, the county, want to be doing anything like Greg was mentioning wanting to, I guess back to the SNAP stuff, but I don't know if you were thinking of other things. If we want to be engaging on a budget cycle or faster interaction with Tompkins Food Future and be a participant, I guess, in the food system as opposed to, I don't have another word for it, but not so much. I think we maybe at this committee should be or at some committee be interacting with y'all more. And I'm curious what my colleagues think about that.
Amanda?
I mean, I guess I would say my thought would be like a liaison, that one legislator would work more closely and then, rather than all of us, but that would just be my inclination.
Yeah, it could be one or two legislators, or it could be, if there's a certain issue, it could be somebody, ebbing and flowing in and out. It could involve sometimes people from, if it's legislators, because I know you're involved with so many folks, or so many folks in the community are involved in this group. So, but if it was something, say, related to, for instance, the DSS process, that might, be something that you're working either directly with them, or it gets passed on to, our housing, HHS, housing, health
and Human Services.
Health and Human Services Committee, to work on. I just want to be cognizant of what you said, that, you're an organization that helps, connect and network, not necessarily doing each thing. So I want to make sure we don't put that on you, to work on that. It sounds like you're more identifying issues, coordinating and figuring out how to facilitate a lot of the issues that you have found. Is that correct?
I think that's true, and I see an opportunity, and also just say, like, always welcome folks to attend Tompkins Food Future meetings and other types of gatherings. I think Randy has been a fantastic liaison now, kind of to both entities. We're meeting right now quarterly, so definitely would welcome anyone else who's interested in that. But I think there's an opportunity, not just to hear from me, but also, for me to identify folks who might have something really relevant to share. One of our partners or collaborators who, is a real expert or is really focused on a particular issue in the food system, to maybe help kind of make the introduction, to say, can they come and give you a 15-minute update on, whatever issue it is at the moment. So I think there's just an opportunity for, more food system folks to get in front of you all and for you to hear from them. And I think that could be a really positive step. And I know that's happened a couple of times, so I think that's been good.
And how many folks have attended meetings or the food system plan forum or the summit? Just wondering around the table. Some of us have, and Kat, I think you did. So there's quite a few of us, that have been involved in it. So that's. Yes. I think that's really helpful to get the information flowing back and forth. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Any other topics or any specific asks or anything we missed?
I don't think so. I think the only thing that you just kind of sparked in my mind, Annie, was with the forum. The intention of the forum is to be a place for exchange and learning and sharing. So I think that's a really, as we continue to do those, I'm hopeful that we'll do the next one in the fall. For anyone interested, I think that's a great place to come and just soak that in. Because I think we had a really solid start with the one we did in April, and I'm really looking forward to building on that.
Yeah, it was really immersive, is how I felt about it. Yeah, really learning and coordinating and hearing what's already going on and the struggles, with different organizations or entities or individuals, farmers. And I know just attended a family event over the weekend in Albany, and one of the topics was about how expensive food, everything but food, and for instance, I know when I brought a dish to pass, and I went to the grocery store, I went to Green Star, and, I try and get organic, healthy food, and one good-sized bag of groceries was $100. And so just thinking about families, they're trying to feed more than one person, or, with kids and things like that. It's just incredible. And one of my nieces said she makes $60,000, has one child, single parent, and her rent just got raised $200. The price of food going up, the after-school childcare got raised $200 a month, and she's struggling, making $60,000. So it's hard. It's not just one person or a family making minimum wage. It's a lot of people are struggling with food security these days.
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for that, Randy.
I'd like to add one thing about SNAP. There is a emergency food application for SNAP that is much shorter, in a shorter period of time for people, and it happens pretty fast. So that it's a short-term fix, but I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, that's good to know, because I was thinking, waiting 30 to 60 days to get food benefits.
This was less than a week, I believe.
Okay. All right. Oh, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah,
Thank
Graham
you.
and Katie, thank you. All right. Next on our agenda is committee member reports. Does anybody have anything today from any of the events or meetings you're going to? Okay. Then I'm going to call the meeting adjourned at 11:31. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.